Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin, and we want to get directly to the phones. We've got Scott Braddock on line one. Scott Braddock, you're editor of Quorum Report, and how are things going there in Austin?
Going okay, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think it's Friday. Friday's always a good day.
Don't complain. It's Friday.
That's
Could be
right.
Way worse.
Last night we went to a bar that wasn't a bar, and
we
had a cigar and some whiskey and had a great night. So.
A former bar,
now
a restaurant.
Yeah, a former bar that absolutely nothing changed in with the exact same menu and everything.
Yeah, do they have a food truck, or they just they're selling more food than they were before?
They just said that if you drink more than if you drink 2 drinks, you have to buy food. They just changed the made you buy food.
Some folks in Austin were joking about having to order mandatory fries.
Yeah.
If you want to have a drink, it really is a fascinating thing the way they have taken some of these. If you walk by certain establishments in Austin, you would think the same thing. That isn't that a bar? I thought that was a bar. There's literally a place called Star Bar in Austin that's reopened. That have changed the calculus for how their food versus their liquor receipts look. And that's one of the things that kind of quietly happened under the radar during the pandemic. It was the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission moved forward with this proposal so that those places that were bars previously could be reconstituted as restaurants and then be subject to the same rules that the governor laid out for restaurants. So were they at 75% capacity? That's what they're supposed to be at, the place that you would have been at last night. Same thing for these other restaurants, but it really is a weird, amorphous time, and again, Matt, they're just making it up as they go.
So, well, and the funny thing to me, I've always been kind of, I always felt like TABC was like a redundant place, and maybe they're not really that needed. But in this case, it seems like they're almost bucking the governor on this to help bars stay open and not have to go out of business.
Well, let's be real clear. None of these agencies are doing anything without it being at the direction of the governor. I will tell you and your listeners, one of the nicknames that people have come up with for Governor Abbott lately because of all the executive orders and the way he's running everything out of his office is sort of micromanaging every single aspect of the regulations that have to do with our everyday lives. Matt, people are calling him Governor Grab It. Because he's just grabbing all the power for himself. And on this deal with the TABC, it was one of the ways that the Abbott administration wanted to get around all of the anger that people were really starting to express about the fact that some businesses were allowed to be open, other businesses were not allowed to be open. And as you know, when you look at some of the different crowd sizes in some of these places, it doesn't make any sense. You would have a place that was, it has always been a restaurant, might be on one corner, and then on the very next corner you'd have a place that's technically a bar, but their crowd would be pretty similar to the place right across the street, and people were saying, that's not right. Why is it they can be open and they can't?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I agree. I think as far as the governor's concerned, I did have a question. I just want to know, because I know that from the conservative side, we've got, of course, Representative Burrows, Representative Frullo here, as well as Charles Perry, Senator, and I haven't really talked to them specifically, but it seems like to me that from the conservative side, we're hearing that the governor has overstepped his bounds, and we need to do something in the next the next session. On the liberal side, are they feeling the same way? I mean, these left wing Democrats, are they like, hey, we need to restrict the governor's power during this? We should have had a special session, and we should have talked about this, or do they think that he's done the right thing?
The politics of the moment have created some very interesting coalitions, and not groups of people that would necessarily agree previously, right? But I do hear it from Democrats and Republicans alike that the governor has overstepped his authority in multiple ways. You remember earlier in the year when the governor said that he was asserting the right to take away the power of mayors and county judges to be able to even create almost any of the rules that have anything to do with containing the pandemic. Liberals and Democrats are very upset about that. Some Republicans, too, who said, look, this is not what the framers of the state intended, was that you would have a disaster and then the governor would be the guy or woman who and it's not specific to Abbott so much as, it's not the way the office is supposed to be run. They'll say that, look, the branch of government that is closest to the people is the legislature, because they stand for re-election more often, and they run in these various districts. You know, there's one way of thinking about it in Lubbock, and another way of thinking about it in urban parts of southeast Texas, like right in inner city Houston, for example. You would have some different ideas from the people in those areas, and they ought to hash it out and debate these things rather than just having one person unilaterally decide what the policy is for the entire state. Now, the governor, in his defense, would have the ability to say that under a disaster declaration, as the executive, he has the right to do certain things. And I think that the way the law is written right now under the Disaster Act in Texas, that he does probably have the right to do that, and that's being litigated now, across multiple fronts. But I think there may be some reform of that coming up, because people would say, Matt, that when they wrote that law originally to respond to disasters, they never envisioned that all 254 counties would be under a disaster at once, and it would go on for months and months and months.
Yeah. Well, I think that a reasonable solution would be that he does have the power to do it for a period of time, but at that point, if it continues past a period of time, then he needs to call a special session, or a special session needs to automatically be called to put the session in there to litigate it, because at this point, nobody except for Governor Abbott has discussed exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah, and that is similar to what county judges have to do, for example, under their disaster powers. They might say, and we saw this happen in Dallas County, a county judge might move quickly to do something like close down certain businesses. And in Dallas, that was the case with the county judge, Clay Jenkins. After 7 days, he has to go in front of Commissioner's Court, and they have to say whether or not he can continue to do that. And in Dallas County, the Commissioner's Court kind of slapped him down and said, no, you're moving too fast there, and you're moving unilaterally on which businesses, picking winners and losers. And so they reined him in, and I've heard Democrats and Republicans alike say that maybe the governor should be similarly constrained.
Yeah, I agree. But so one of the things that Governor Abbott has come out with, I mean, he's been coming out with some, interesting legislation for, reform. Right now he's looking at, riots and how that's done, and even looking at a way to, arrest those that seem to be paying for the riots. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting from what he said yesterday. I think it was yesterday. What exactly is it that he's trying to do, and is he just trying to take focus away from coronavirus and put it on something else?
There is the thought that that's what he's doing, and I've heard some Republicans sort of grumble that, and I've heard Democrats almost screaming it from the rooftops that he's trying to change the subject from coronavirus. You may have seen there was some polling yesterday in the New York Times, Texas-specific, where it did seem that when you have these two competing stories out there, that the law and order message is getting some traction. I mean, you see the president saying that over and over again, as there have been riots, and we would say in most places there have been peaceful protests, but there has been some rioting as well. And the president keeps saying, we need law and order. And when you looked at the polling information out of Texas, it seemed that those who are pushing the law and order message may be winning for right now over those who want to prioritize the coronavirus. The governor yesterday unveiled several proposals, and what they really had to do, and I won't go through all of them, there were 6 of them, but basically what he was talking about is increasing the penalties for things that are already illegal. For example, striking a law enforcement officer, basically assaulting a law enforcement officer. It's already the case, Matt, that if you assault a police officer, if you don't get killed in the moment, you're going to jail. That's already the case, right? One of the proposals he laid out was, that a law enforcement officer assault during a riot would lead to a mandatory 6-month sentence. So it's one of these law and order things. He wants to really, push that message. One thing I heard from some conservatives sort of under the radar yesterday was the idea that, and when we see this in drug cases and in other parts of the law, where what has been done is increasing penalties for something that's already illegal, it puts us in the place we were, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where you did have, and this was happening before then, but you were starting to see real consensus from Republicans and Democrats around the idea of criminal justice reform, where maybe some things should absolutely be illegal, but maybe we should make sure that the that the sentence and the punishment fits the crime, so that we're punishing people based on whether it's really good for society rather than whether we're mad at that person. And to have all these increased penalties, a felony for this and a felony for that, for certain things that are already illegal, strikes a lot of folks as, sort of a throwback to the days of everything being about law and order and, hang 'em high in the Texas sky kind of thing, when it used to be prosecutors around the state, who were really of that mentality, and now it's the governor who's really pushing that.
Yeah, and the other, honestly, you can always say that looking at something like that is not going to hurt. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that feel like maybe if we get anything from this, you shouldn't be defunding the police. This, to me, it's not necessarily a police problem. We need to look at the laws and see if there's laws that are causing some of the problems. But
some of the laws are some of the problems. There are police who will tell you that they have been asked to do things that they were never signing up for when they originally became police officers. And they're responding to mental health situations. We saw a horrible situation in Houston back in April, I believe, when the video of it came out in recent weeks, the body cam video, from a guy who was just melting down. He was on meth. He was having a break with reality, is the way it seemed on the video. And the police who showed up, it wasn't that they didn't have resources. There were about a dozen cops around this person, pointing guns at him, cussing at him. He's cussing at them. If they had had different resources, as in, having some mental health experts, some people who knew how to respond to such a situation, had that kind of training, the situation might have gone differently. But the man ended up on his knees and being shot, multiple times and killed, and just a really bad scenario for both for the officers and for the guy and his family. And 4 officers in Houston got fired. So there does need to be a real conversation about how to better manage resources, and this whole idea of defunding police, I think to your point of it kind of being a distraction, it's election year politics. Republicans are talking about that. The Democrats want to talk more about coronavirus. As you know, and I think as we've kind of laid out in this conversation, if the debate is about the response to coronavirus, well, then Governor Abbott doesn't look very good. If the debate is about getting tough on crime and protecting the police, well, then Governor Abbott comes out better in that situation.
So one of the things that you had sent to me, we actually talked about this last night a little bit, was that Chairman West, the Ag Commissioner Miller, and other Republicans are suing Governor Abbott over the extension of early voting. And I think I understand where they're coming from, but out of all the things that Abbott's done, is that really the thing that they should be suing over?
The chairman of the party is breaking with tradition in a huge way. There's nothing legally that says that he can't do this, but it's in line with what Alan West, the chairman, has been saying about Governor Abbott all along, right? He's taken issue with a lot of the different things that the governor has done in response to coronavirus. West has
and to be honest, that shows you how much power Governor Abbott he is taken for himself, but also that he's losing to some extent. I don't know. He seemed to be very loved during the election, but now it just seems like nobody's going to stand with him.
Nobody. He was at 70% approval or something like that. He had very high approval, one of the most popular governors in the United States, Republican or Democrat, before the coronavirus. And during the virus, his numbers collapsed to below 50% for general approval and down to 35% in one of the last polls I saw, specifically for his coronavirus response. And you don't get to those kind of abysmal numbers without it being a bipartisan thing, right? That Republicans and Democrats are upset with him, and I think that's manifested in this lawsuit. And what they're saying, Matt, is just follow the Texas Constitution. The governor has said that if mail-in ballots were going to be approved, as far as an expanded mail-in ballot program, he said the legislature would have to do that. And in this lawsuit, what the chairman, West, and the agriculture commissioner and others, what they're arguing, Charles Perry from your area is one of the folks on this lawsuit. They're arguing that if you want to expand early voting, make another change to the election, that should also be up to the legislature, just like the governor said that mail-in ballots are up to the legislature. They say he's being hypocritical and he should stick to what's in the law.
All right, Scott, my producer's going crazy. We'll run out of time, but thanks for coming on. I want to remind everyone that you have the Quorum Report, quorumreport.com. Is there anything specific you want to highlight from there?
Oh, we've got all of the races around the state featured there. You can find out what's going on, quorumreport.com. We'll get you up to speed.
All right, thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, thanks. We'll be right back on News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO.